Yes, thanks everyone for joining today. I'm really excited to have such fantastic individuals in the vacation rental industry that are leading the charge when it comes to AI tools and innovation in the space. So today's going to be a pretty open roundtable where we're going to have a bunch of different topics that we're going to review, from the guest experience to how guests might change how they're booking vacation rentals in the future, a ton of topics, how to leverage AI in your business. And then at the end, we'll have a ton of time for Q&A. So if you do have questions during the webinar, please use the Q&A function of Zoom, and I'll have that open. So if it's pertinent to what we're talking about, I can add it into the conversation, or we can wait till the very end. Also, like all the webinars we do here at StayFi, this will be recorded and then published on our YouTube channel. And then you can go ahead and watch it if you can't stay for the entire time. And we'll send that out as well in an email. So we can go ahead and get started. And I'll start by introducing myself, and then the panelists will introduce themselves. So I am Arthur Kolker. I am the founder and CEO of StayFi. And we are, oh, hey, there you go. Hey, Simon. You're still, I think you can change your name, I think, as well, but
I had
I can see you're here. I saw you were just attendee, so we'll figure that out. Yeah, but I'm the founder and CEO of StayFi. We are a all-in-one marketing platform for short-term rentals, and I will hand it over to Marcus. You can go ahead and introduce yourself first.
Hi everyone. I'm Marcus. I'm CEO and co-founder here at Hostaway. We started a bit late, 11 years ago, but we managed to become the biggest PMS in the vacation rental space. And we also last year became the first unicorn in the vacation rental technology space. I'm really excited, and thank you very much for the invite.
Awesome. Well, great having you here. Simon, do you want to introduce yourself?
absolutely. Thank you for the patience. My name is Simon Sarusi. I'm currently calling from Carlsbad, where we are for IMN Summer. And I'm the co-founder and COO of SuiteOp. Previously co-founded SoSuite, a short-term rental and hospitality brand in the northeast of the US with about 400 keys. And throughout that experience, saw that we could do more to help operators that were looking to scale their business, connect the back office and the guest experience in their operations in a cohesive platform. And SuiteOp came out of those experiences. Excited to be here.
Awesome. And Sam, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Sam Dundas. I'm the co-founder of Besty AI. We started Besty about 2.5 years ago. I got into the space like most people, starting a property management business with my brothers just out of COVID in Canada and Germany. And then I've always just been really passionate about hospitality, grew up working in restaurants, and really took a liking to technology out of college. And of course, like most people, really interested in AI. And so we help property managers around the world, about 25 countries, over 30,000 properties on the platform today, just with like practical ways of implementing AI across guest messaging, upselling, guest experience, cleaning and operations, and all that jazz.
Awesome. Well, thanks all of you for joining. Really excited to have all of you here. And when we were discussing in our kind of prep session beforehand, just so everyone knows how we wanted to structure today, we really thought it would make the most sense to first start by looking at kind of each part of the booking journey and how AI and new AI tools are impacting how guests first find short-term rentals, and then the experience that happens during the stay, and then of course what happens after the stay, impacting all parts of the business. So first, just to kind of prompt this first discussion point, thanks to Hostaway, we found some great data in their latest report about short-term rentals and how AI is impacting operations in the business today, asking hosts and property managers about how they are marketing their properties and what channels are they using to market to guests. And interestingly, or not surprisingly, AI did not come up yet as a big source of where people are finding or where guests are finding their properties, whether through LLMs or other travel agentic platforms. So right now, obviously, SEO, organic social, email marketing, loyalty return gets, digital ads. That's where people are focused today on finding direct booking. So I kind of wanted to open up to the panel, to whoever wants to contribute first, how they think AI and AI tools are already changing how folks find short-term rentals and kind of what they expect how rapidly things to change in the near future.
Can I start?
Yeah, of course, Marcus.
Yeah, so this was a report put together by our team. You can download it on the Hostaway website. First of all, I don't think if we look at this question about what should property managers do to drive direct bookings, these are things you can do. The problem with AI is you can't actually do anything to get visibility on AI. What you need to do is exactly these things. You need to provide good guest experiences and then make sure that they write about it. You need to have a lot of reviews, but of course, you need to have them on your website, and your website needs to be found. So if you're in a certain area, like let's say a city like Milan, you need to have a website that includes the name Milan, and maybe milanvacationrentals.com would be a great brand name for your business. When it comes to the OTAs and direct bookings, it's a very interesting topic. We're in a unique spot where we get first access to how the OTAs think. And of course, most of those discussions are under NDA, so I can't share much. But I can share this that that both Expedia and Booking.com stock prices are down 23 and 26% year to date. And they're considered tech stocks, even though they're marketplaces. But I don't know if you've seen what's going on, but the tech market is kind of going crazy and they're going in the opposite direction. The reason is simple. AI is a massive threat to OTAs. Um, Perhaps not a massive threat to OTAs, but rather it's uncertainty right now, how people will find products. And we saw already over the last few years that sites that aggregate reviews about products, they're getting lower and lower ranking on Google because nobody's using them anymore. Because you have specific needs. You want a product that does a specific thing in a specific use case. And that's where LLM can be really powerful. And we are investing heavily in making sure that property managers have the right tools in place to be found on the LLMs and also help them build their reputation and make sure that guests can book directly. And I do believe we will see a similar thing happening here. I always mention the airline because traffic is so interesting. So 10 years ago, 15% of all the tickets were booked directly with the airline. The rest were through travel agents. Now, today, because of Google Travel or Google Flights, everyone is able to find out, and also the efforts that the airlines have done, but that percentage has changed to 70% in just 10 years. And so far, we haven't seen a big shift in vacation rental. So I think globally it sits around 30% right now of direct bookings. But of course, for a lot of property managers, they get either 0% or maybe 80% direct bookings, depending on how far along the journey they are. But it's, yeah, very exciting future ahead.
And Marcus, just curious, can you tell from the direct booking websites that Hostaway operates if LLM traffic is delivering any direct bookings, or do you find that right now LLMs are not great at surfacing property management direct booking websites when people are asking about travel?
They are coming up, yes.
But still
But,
probably a
but
pretty
yeah,
small share.
not
Yeah.
the challenge is that the content of so LLMs tend to favor property managers that look like they have been around a lot. So they for example, if you let's say were to rent a villa or you ask for travel recommendations, sometimes the LLM will proactively say you should rent a villa, you should not stay in a resort. Or it gives you two choices, rent a villa or a resort. But then you ask which villa. Um, they favor those that have had a website for a very long time, that has a lot of content on the website about what to do in the region, but they are still not at the stage where they look at availability or even look at the reviews. Are the properties good or not? So if you the guest will likely end up booking through AI with a property manager that has been around for decades, that has a solid reputation in the market, and probably has hundreds of properties rather than someone who, let's say, started 5 years ago and has 20 properties.
And just this is an open question for the whole panel. Do any of you have any opinion on if what people need to be doing to be found in Google search, kind of those traditional SEO approaches, which is definitely similar to what Marcus is talking about with a lot of content, a lot of listings. Do you guys see anything different people should be doing to prepare themselves to be found by agents, or do you think it's pretty similar?
Yeah, I think, and Simon, if you have anything to add, but I think something that's interesting going down the rabbit hole of like how websites really work. And you work with somebody like Hostaway, they help you with a lot of the direct booking stuff, building a lot of that out for you. But there's this, sort of concept of allowing Google and the sort of search engines to crawl your website, right? So it's like this robots.txt was something that sits on every sitemap today so Google knows, okay, you're running Ocean City vacation rentals, and here's where people can find you, and here's the sitemap and things like that. Now they're adding like LLMs.txt, which is sort of the evolution for discoverability at the search level. So of course, Google, the same companies, right, that built this the internet, right, Google and Amazon to some large capacity are all also backing all of these big frontier labs like ChatGPT and Anthropic with Claude. And so it's coming from sort of the same source. And it's just the cool thing, like Marcus was saying, is now the way people are going to search is changing. So being able to semantically pair, my best vacation rental experience with like that semantic information on the website, which isn't going to be like, number of bedrooms or like specific deterministic things, but like the essence of the property. And I think the big disconnect now is like, it's funny, we joke, I've still yet to find somebody who's booked a flight or like a hotel or something through an LLM. So it does feel like we're definitely like I think maybe building for the new foundation of like what everything will look like in the future, because it's not going to happen overnight. Like that was like a 10-year journey building out, the way the internet worked and the way people build websites. Or even Marcus, like, not to date you guys or anything, but having been in the industry a while, like people used to be scared to book a property online, right? Like that used to be a thing that a lot of our customers they sent checks. That's how far it's come, or bring cash to the property. Like the idea of buying something. I remember when I was a kid, there was a 50% chance if I bought something on eBay that it just wasn't showing up. You know what I mean? So I feel like we're definitely in this early inning of the next phase. And I think it's interesting because for the most people on this, the panel are just listening in today, like probably haven't felt much of that source of like this big wave of how people are going to book in the future quite yet, which I think is okay. I think that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It just means like, I think these things take, we're doing a whole rehaul of the internet right now and the way people experience things online. So I don't know, it's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually had a great experience using a agentic travel agent called Arden to book flights and hotels, although obviously they haven't expanded to vacation rentals yet. So just kind of for anyone on the panel, especially with what Booking and Expedia and Airbnb are doing today, do we feel like in the future, if people are using agents to book travel, will it be with these generalist models like ChatGPT or Anthropic? Or do we think there'll be new specialist entrants that actually can capture a pretty large share of booking traffic? Or you may have uncertainty about that.
I think that's a great question, and it's on a lot of people's minds. I believe there's three camps. There's very specialized pieces of software. Let's say if you're using Zoom right now, I don't see any AI stuff here. But obviously, you couldn't use ChatGPT to, let's say, summarize what Arthur just said, whereas only Zoom could do that. So that would be a specialized tool. So then there's industries where probably specialized tools are better than the generic ones. For example, if you track your calories, it would be great to take a picture so you can estimate the size or how much cheese is on the pizza and so on. It would be great if that's within the calorie tracker so that you wouldn't have to go to another app like ChatGPT to find out the answer and then put it in the first app. But then there will also be cases where you simply want to ask a broad range of things, like the travel planning. Yeah, that's great with booking hotels and and flights. but maybe also want to coordinate a family gathering and maybe want to know what the local events, the neighborhood parties are that week, and maybe it's not as strong as using a combination of Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think the way I look at it is to add to what Marcus and Sam said. I think we're trending towards a world where there's going to be a bundling of models in order to reach the best outcome. So when you and we're seeing it now. I mean, a new lab came out of Japan, been working on this under wraps for a while, and they've been able to replicate some of the U.S. labs' best performance by combining four various queries existing models. So I think we're definitely entering a world in which there's going to be mainstream labs, the Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, and I'm sure a few others that will come through as well. And those will plug as well into other more specialized models. And in a way, or for efficiency's sake as well, right? I mean, we're living in a world now where tokens are heavily subsidized. It's a very unique world that's probably not going to last forever, and token as a utility will evolve. But that also means that there's going to be, I think, to Marcus's point, more specialized tools that are going to be able to do things really, really well, really efficiently. And getting ready for that era, I think, is really important. So to add to what Sam said, I think that travelers ultimately are not looking for a spec, right? I mean, originally when a traveler is looking on an OTA, they're typing in location, and then they're looking at images that are most likely driving their bookings, and then maybe using filters. We're I think going to a world where travel search is going to become a lot more outcome based. Sam I think said it well there. Like, people are going to be not looking for a two-bedroom large living room by lake. They're going to be looking for a large family home where three generations can coexist for a week with some fun games, but also good things for adults. And to be able to be, I think, ranked properly on searches like these, it's going to be really crucial for every operator to over-index, to invest time, not just in your accommodation, but in what's around it, in the experience beyond the heads into beds, right? So think about what makes your property unique, what makes the location unique, and that is also where you can, frankly, win against OTAs. OTAs are by definition generalists. They have to please a global audience. You don't. You need to please people that are looking to book in your area. And you can over-index on that. You can over-index on the things around it, and long term, using strategies like the ones that Sam raised, with ensuring that things are properly indexed, be able to succeed in this future world.
I think that's a great segue into kind of the next topic. So we talked a lot about how guests may discover properties in the future and how their behavior is already changing, but I think we should move over a little bit into the actual guest experience and how operators are implementing AI today. And again, thanks to Hostaway, we see when people were asked or property managers were asked. I think the obvious one where we've obviously you guys, Simon, Sam, and Marcus all have parts of your platform that address the guest communication piece. So I'm kind of curious, how have you seen guest, why do you guys think guest communication is kind of the first area operators are adopting AI tools in, and kind of what do you think the next big areas where operators are going to be implementing AI tools to enhance their business? And maybe Sam, you want to start with this one because I know you guys really entered the space with an AI first product.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I mean, it was very, Reid Hoffman's. If you aren't embarrassed by the first version of the product you launched too late. Our first version was just a very simple autopilot response engine. It even sat as like a Chrome extension with Hostaway. Actually, Hostaway is our first integration partner, where we just had a little draft mode autopilot directly from the inbox. And of course, we've evolved a lot over then. The LLMs themselves have, of course, gotten a lot more performant in terms of just reliability. And so I think the baseline now, whether it's like us or working with like any of the AI native features within the PMS you use or any other point solutions. I think it's sort of a baseline expectation that it can handle that sort of like hit on first base around commonly asked questions, even if that's just regurgitating check-in instructions because the guest didn't check the email. And like the context lengths are good enough such that, 99% of what the guest is going to need would have already been communicated in that, chat. And it's just that being, it's just showing up at the door and asking for the code. I think that's, if we were talking about this a year ago, that was still, I think, a big push for people to think that way. But, we're having, second and third generation property management companies who we would think would be the most adverse to any sort of AI at the front lines, being very comfortable with it. And then I think like where it can have like a more enhanced, like feedback loop is around like catering, for example, like automated messages. Every person on this webinar has experienced this where you've just like tripped over yourself because you've replied to a message and then some automated message goes out, sort of contradicts and you're sort of got because you're trying to make it personalized, but you some like, hey, they're dealing with an issue, and then you have some scheduled message, 12 hours after they check in being like, hey, hope everything's going really well. And they're like, no, it's not going well. And it's like really kind of broken. So I think like automated messaging has been an insurance policy to make sure people get all the information they need. I think that's becoming a lot more personalized. So like the AI is aware of the things it has to get to that person over the course of their stay, but it's not hammering them with a bunch of like arbitrary information or repeating itself. And then I think how that sort of even goes into loyalty for like return stays, like we're doing a lot on the loyalty side. So folks will sign up with the Wi-Fi through StayFi, have a bunch of email addresses. We can look at those extra guests and we can cater, for example, if we're doing upsells, if they're part of our membership loyalty program, they're going to get a message. And instead of saying, hey, it's $50 for an early check-in, it's like, hey, thanks for being a member of our loyalty program. You have that waived and it's a lot more personalized, or picking up on like the occasion of those stays. When somebody books and says, I'm here for a 30th birthday, what we do is we'll have folks at booking confirmation, hey, would love to hear what brings you into town. And then we have like a little AI listener that just like based off that response puts that occasion into the database, pushes it back to the PMS. So like why people are staying, and then the automated messaging becomes a lot more human. That's like a very like something that is interesting because it's not like directly related to like adding more revenue, and it's not like all the really like automating the job, but it is like a very nice upgrade that I think makes it a little bit more human. And I've always said this, but like the best sort of digital guidebook and guest experience and all that is very secondary to that might be 1% of it. But like the end of the day, the property, the asset itself has to be very high quality, right? So like you could give the best guest experience in the world, call up every single guest you have, do the highest touch thing. But at the end of the day, if the property isn't great, it's not clean, it's a very thin layer between staying in a nice vacation rental and just being in somebody's house. It's funny, we have this like digital security blanket around, oh, I'm in an Uber because I have this app, but the second Uber craps out, I'm just in the back of some guy's car. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think like it doesn't take much before, you want to keep people in that sort of, that vacation mindset. And I think AI is just having a lot of ways of making it personalized in a way that I think otherwise, in addition to all the great stuff it's doing to save costs and generate more money, I think there's a lot of semantics that are unlocked as a part of like personalizing the guest experience.
And Marcus, I saw you guys announce today your Hostaway AI co-host, which reading the email seemed very oriented around business intelligence and operations. So I'm kind of curious, what are your thoughts of how folks will be able to leverage tools like that? And maybe where, if we do the survey next year, people will be saying actually business intelligence and operations were more dramatically impacted.
Yeah, we just had a massive launch of our AI co-host, and we were not the first to launch it, but we studied what the competitors were doing, and they were all missing the actionable insights into the data. The thing is, a lot of what the property managers are dealing with is actually analyzing data, and of course, not everyone is doing that. But at some point, if you're not doing it, your business is not going to go well, and you don't even know why. And what kind of data is that? Well, the financial. There's always, when you reach 20 properties, there's one property that you're actually, the amount of work you put in is not worth the money that you get for it. It's just too much work, and you never know which one it is. Also, the guest communication tell a very different story than the guest reviews. So you have properties that constantly have problems for one reason or the other, and some of those problems can be fixed. But I think the biggest challenge is even asking the right questions, and that's what our model helps with. So it tells you, hey, here are the things you need to ask about your business. And that will save a lot of time and drive more revenue over the years. Or just a simple query. For example, if an owner reaches out that says, hey, I got this property, how much money would it make? That's a very common task of analyzing data for a property manager that AI will completely change.
Yeah,
And
just
from
uh,
folks, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say one interesting thing on that point is like one thing that's really hard to nail is the weight that you should give to a piece of feedback from the review or the guest message, right? So like one person mentioning it in private reviews, private feedback, they gave a 5-star review, but they nicked you on this like small thing, either in the public or private feedback, and having that tied to the listing. And then basically you can receive that information from a guest message. It can be from a phone call. It can be from a review. It can be from private feedback, and being able to stack rank them based off of like how hard it would be to fix and how much it comes up, like the frequency is something that's been impossible to track. So that's something we built out as well. It's just like being able to say, oh, this thing has actually been brought up 9 times across 6 reviews and 5 messages or 3, whatever, versus this is just like, oh, somebody being very picky. So that you when you go to your owner and propose, hey, I think we need to get a new hot tub back there, you're not bringing it up as like some guy off a cuff just based off what we know think is better. We have like the data to back it up, and that's another big unlock, whether it's with us or whatever, that like is something that people just can't track. That like that's just like a brutal thing to have to append to somebody every time you get a review or message. Try to write down something and then gauge how hard it is to replace. You know what I mean?
Uh, Yeah, and one thing I think that we're going to be seeing in an interview. I think Arthur, you asked a good question. Like, what is it going to look like in a year? And Marcus got a good hint of the answer there. I think we're going to see a blend of those things here. And the reason why versus them being sort of split out the way they are today, because that's obviously how we traditionally sort of have been thinking about our business, right? Operations, business intelligence, pricing, different teams working across different sectors of the business. I think ultimately, bolting a good LLM in an inbox is something that can now be done quite quickly. We've even seen some of our customers and partners build it on top of SuiteOp in-house. I think the really interesting next stage is going to be moving that and tying it to the operations and physical layer of your business. So Sam mentioned the quality of the home. That's obviously crucial. You want to be able to have a feedback loop so that if a housekeeper or a team member, your team's on the ground and eyes and ears on the ground, see something that needs work, that can be brought back to the right person, summarized accordingly, and surfaced as needed. Similarly, when we're talking about physical world, talking about smart device, Wi-Fi, et cetera. And so like obviously here, StayFi, I think is going to be like an integral part of that journey too in that way. Like where you're going to want to know if there is a Wi-Fi issue, communicate with, StayFi's status to be able to surface that to a team on the ground. So I think we're going to increasingly see guest communication, operations, and the physical layer come together over the next 6 to 12 months. And I expect that those categories here will start to blend. So that's one thing we're definitely heavily focused on and quite bullish is providing a level of super intelligence to your teams on the ground and to your non-living smart items on the ground as well, so that they can automate parts of the operation. At the end of the day, though, when we're talking about guest communication and guest-facing AI, I think the thing to think about, and that's something we do in software as well, is instead of thinking about the actual solution and the product and like what can I add to my operation here, it's think about the user and the guest, and take a step back and see, okay, what does a user want? What is mapped your entire guest journey? The best use of artificial intelligence is the one that is invisible to the guest. It's the one that is invisible to you as well as you use things. Things should be surfaced accordingly, and the most important thing should be displayed to you throughout your day to day. So I think we're going to notice it blending, and we're going to see it be a less visible layer in order for hospitality to really surface back.
And have you found in your own experience, Simon, where you initially were trying to develop a solution for property managers where you instinctually said, hey, we should use AI. This is like a hammer for every single problem, and then found that either humans or a more traditional software approach was appropriate. So I feel like right now everyone is focused on building AI this and AI that. Like, do you
Yeah.
find where good scenarios where it's not the right solution, or maybe not the right solution for this operator?
Time and time again, I think obviously the AI hype is not overblown. We're extremely bullish on it. We invest in it every single day. But it can be applied in ways that are uh, not necessarily deliberate, where you're just saying, "Oh, this is a problem I have. Let's just like slap AI, it'll fix it." And the problem with that is that one, AI models by definition and AI solutions by definition, any AI solutions is going to be probabilistic, right? So really the way you have to think about it is if you get a guest message 100 times and the message is the same, you're going to get 91 different answers, and maybe 9 answers will look very, very similar, almost identical. And that's okay, obviously. And that way you have to consider your AI tools to be, teammates that can vary, that can make mistakes, and that will take relevant context to think what the best solution is. So to a problem. But what that also means is that for workflows, for things that need to happen in a consistent way, which is a good part of our operations, especially in the back office side of things and in the field ops side of things, where things need to be very consistent. A level of consistency is obviously crucial. That AI can be overused. And we've definitely made the mistake of wanting to build something that looks incredibly sexy on the surface, just to realize that we were, token maxing, right? We're just like throwing AI tokens at the problem that could have been solved in a way more efficient way with an algorithm and with something that is more predictable. I think one question that every single property manager needs to ask themselves as they onboard any AI tool or any feature, whether it's back office things, whether it's specialized tools in the industry, is question the token use and think about the token transparency. Like, are you getting priced on a flat price? Are you getting priced on a usage based? Is it potentially flat now? Ask about what it will be in the future. If it's KG, that's a good signal for you to like understand a little bit more what you're actually buying here. Cheap looking AI pricing is a bit of a land grab strategy sometimes that we've seen like other softwares occasionally do, where they're going to price their software way below inference cost to win on the market. And then once you're deep into workflows and locked, and the customer acquisition is done, price can go up. So think about all those things, whether AI is one useful, and as you do implement it, who you effectively implement it with and how.
And maybe for those that on the webinar that don't totally understand, could you just maybe explain a little bit about how, when you're using Anthropic to power some tool in your software that's generating content or some workflow or some insight, like how that pricing works and why that might be so much more expensive than traditional algorithms or software as we used to think of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you use any tool that uses AI, obviously some tools do it more efficiently through methods like token caching. There's a lot of different more technical strategies that can be put in place to reduce that cost. But whenever you make any type of AI query, it uses what you can consider as an analogy, energy, right? Every time the AI thinks, someone pays for the electricity, if you will. That someone is either the vendor or that someone eventually can become you. So the AI not only reads what you send it, whether it's something you write or whether it's a button you click on, but then it then has to write to it. And that's going to cost, a short message could cost a couple thousand tokens, depending on the model. That could be anywhere from cents of a cent to a couple of cents. But if you do that 10,000 times across a portfolio that is growing, you're starting to run a pretty meaningful compute bill. So I think one thing that you have to think about, and it's it's a bit of an intense framing, but I like to think as like a bit of an addiction framing. The AI labs today, Anthropic, Gemini, OpenAI, they have enough revenue and they have enough money in the bank to be able to price below the cost in order to get you dependent on it. So it's crucial that you think now about efficiency, the same way that you're not going to leave the HVAC on between every single guest for a week, and that you're going to use a thermostat solution that's going to automate that, something that we like focus on heavily. You're going to want to think about your AI usage, I think, in the same way increasingly. And it's best to prepare now and ask those questions earlier than later.
It kind of leads into our next topic, which is really I also love this survey because they asked different property managers their time savings and cost savings. And I think what I found in this that was so interesting is there's a huge variety of adoption between property managers where, half of them in the weekly cost savings either said it wasn't applicable to them or there were none. And then we had folks that were already saving thousands and thousands of dollars a week thanks to AI tools. So I guess kind of in your guys' experience, since you obviously are all pitching to new customers or to new folks that haven't adopted any AI tools today, what are the current objections or hesitancy you guys see from property managers that haven't adopted solutions, and how are you overcoming those today?
Well, I can share. We did a survey also to our customer base on our dashboard. There was an invite to give feedback on what you want AI to do that it doesn't do today. And there was one. I read all the responses, but there was one that was really funny. It said, "Nothing. AI is completely useless. There's no point in spending any time on it." And I think, and I somewhat agree with him. I think his point of view is very valid. Many people, when Uber came out or when Google came out, said that it's not, you don't need to spend any time on it, and that's a valid point until maybe one day it becomes a necessity. Um, Now, a lot of people, I think, are hesitant, especially with the auto replies, but that honestly has lowered a lot because of consumer adoption. So 2 years ago, or even a year ago, a lot of consumers got, well, the guests, they got wary. When I say consumers, I'm comparing also to other industries where AI solutions are being used. They get a bit scared when there's a bot who doesn't know stuff or promises the wrong things. But then once you file the return with the Amazon AI chat, you realize how awesome life can be with that. And you want to give the same experience to your guests. So yeah, I think I don't have any arguments. I think it's up to each one to decide, there's new technology available, do you want to use it or not? When cars came around, are you going to stick with the horses or are you willing to give a car a go? It's not up to me to convince you. This is the future. It's here, and either you're in the future or you're in the past. It's that simple.
Yeah,
Sam? Yeah.
yeah. I think the way we sort of thought through this when we were building out sort of beyond our kind of core kind of like inbox product was to just start with that question openly, like where are property managers spending the most time, so that at least if we built that, you couldn't make the argument that it's not going to save them time because it was de facto built in that framing. So like a big thing, and it's some of it's not even AI, it's just like better workflows, right? Like how much to finding out that some housekeeping managers spend like 20 hours a week, manually copy pasting work orders from, you know, like cleaning and op software right into their owner statements, and being able to nicely map those together to make sure it's like either a one-click button or syncing. At least we can tackle that and say, okay, we saved like technically, if this works, like and you run it, it's tell me how much time it saved you, if anything, and if we're doing a good job there. And that sort of guided our roadmap. So like another one is the AI like has gotten a lot better at using the browser. So like one of our systems, right, if it's going to send an alteration request on Airbnb, and that's something that, okay, Besty sells a gap night, which we're pretty well known for, which is like a very simple automation. But before it was like create a task for a team member to go in and send the alteration request, versus now we can just sign in through their browser and the AI goes and does the manual work and it doesn't even rely on APIs. So like that's all these little micro repeatable actions, where before it was like, yeah, how many times do you answer the same questions? It sort of evolved to what are the actions you take the most commonly that are like the most painful to do and like repetitive. And so building it around that way, and then we can say, okay, it might not be one or two of those, but like the sum of all those parts ends up being like a pretty awesome worker, like a pretty good workload that if all I know deterministically, Bestie or whatever is going to handle these 9 things reliably, I'm like going from the problem first to just building really, really robust systems around it versus being like, here's this sort of multi-purpose AI panacea, that could just do all this stuff in the abstract. So I think that's where we've evolved a lot more, is just more on like the action side, like mimicking the workflows of the people and trying to build that to be more systematized. And then as we've been doing that, the models themselves like just keep getting so much better. It was pretty interesting. Like I just listened to a podcast the other day where nobody actually knows how good any of these models are because they only have about 2 weeks between one releases and then the next one comes out. And so nobody's ever just run a model for like a whole year to see how really good it is. So we're never really going to know because they just keep trumping each other. But all that means downstream for anybody listening is just like, it's just going to get infinitely cheaper. And it's just for any like really competitive market, it's just going to be net accretive to us as like the business owners, especially in like service heavy business lines, like short-term rentals.
And for your customers, Sam, or for someone who's on this call who's purchasing a tool like that you offer, what separates those operators that implement it really well across their organization and are seeing the maximal benefits versus maybe those that are less successful? Like, what tips would you have for anybody who's purchasing a new AI communication operations tool to make sure that it's really adopted fully by folks across their organization, especially if they're a larger property manager, could be in multiple markets where that can be challenging?
Yeah, I think it's like finding some common ground of just like what's one thing we could do extremely well and then buy the trust with the operator. So it's almost like nobody really believes you. You come to them, you say, I can do these 50 different things, even if we point them to like another 50 customers, until you see it on your business and all the nuances of your guest experience and everything, you kind of have to earn it incrementally. So it's like from the property manager's perspective, it's never been a better time because there's now not like 5 or 6 AI softwares to choose from. There might be like 50, and so you do have like, sort of a knife fight for like building a competitive product organically in the same way you saw evolutions of like pricing, dynamic pricing softwares. And, so that ecosystem is also evolving just by like in a Darwinian aspect. And then for you to engage with them, like it should be pretty frictionless given how competitive it is that you'll have folks that are jumping at the bit to just like give them an opportunity to do something for you. So it's a real like buyer's market right now as the property management company to say like, I can run like pretty frictionless tests. Sometimes folks come to us and they're like, hey, I'm just running these other 3 tools in parallel. I'm just going to pick the best one. That's a great way to keep us honest, but then also buys. And what I would just urge people, not to, given like the promise of where it could go, even if you think there's a 50% probability that all of this is going to get really, really good, or even a 30% probability, it definitely is worth taking a few swings. So like if you tried one, don't let it like cast, the net around your whole view. Like I wouldn't be too principled about it. I would say, listen, like if someone knocked on your door and said 30% chance any one of these tools could be a 10x game changer for you, and the first one isn't, like any rational business person wouldn't just throw that all away based off one experience. So I do think you have to be able to willing to risk a little bit about like things you're out of your comfort zone on, whether that's like guest experience, whether that's sort of going like pencils down on your operation a little bit and trusting the AI. So I do think it does take that little bit of leap of faith, and the people who are most successful are like at a foundational level know where the puck is going, like Marcus was saying, like knows that's the future but needs to find very sort of practical on ramps to do it. And I actually don't think we're facing a lot. It's interesting. If we were talking a year or two ago, it was definitely like you really gotta like really got to reassure people. But I think like the general reception now is people like, no, we know this is the future. Nobody's arguing that. We just want to find like, how is this going to not go off the rails if I implement it? So generally speaking, I'd say it's very positive. It's just like a matter of delivering on what you say you can do. You know what I mean?
And for Simon, just curious, for operators looking to adopt new tools, I don't know if you've come across employee resistance or inability to kind of go beyond the decision makers down the whole tree of the organization. Just kind of curious if you have any thoughts on how PM should approach that adoption of tools.
Absolutely. So I think the first thing that the first framing that should be flipped and that will help PMs improve adoption within their own organization, because it's obviously challenging. I mean, if you're telling people, hey, I want you to use Claude, I want you to use a SuiteOps AI feature, I want you to use Hostaway's automated reporting, some people are going to think, am I getting replaced? Am I like, are you asking me to replace myself? And I think that this obviously one is problematic. You're not going to get your employees to and your team members to get buy-in. But ultimately, I also think it's generally the wrong framing. I think that we're thinking about it as like time saving and cost saving. I think we should completely flip it and think about it as like an abundance creation opportunity here. And so what I mean by that here is like things that were impossible at like 50 units, 100, or even 300 units now aren't. Like you can do things today that you simply weren't able to do a year ago. So it's not about, okay, how can I like cut my OpEx a little bit and how can I like generate an additional dollar there? It's more like, no, no, no. Like think about it as like, okay, now that I have my guest communication handled, that I don't need to worry as much about this particular part of my operations, how can I have more time to like, use Hostaway as a new tool and a new co-host and say like, figure out what is my least performing unit and not just come up with a conclusion of occupancy is down, but actually get a holistic answer and a hypothesis for it and being able to do things that are actionable, whereas previously that might have taken you 3 months to get to the answer. It's like generating seasonal fresh content for your listings. Like that would have taken a while. And now you can do that. And that's just going to make you a much better operator and move the needle significantly across your business. So I think the first thing to do is flip the framing. The second thing is enabling your team. At SuiteOp, and I share this with all of our customers, we work very strategically with every partner that onboards, where it's not just like, here's a tool and then, here's an SOP and good luck. We ensure that they become extremely successful on the platform and build their own workflows. And one way we do that is encourage them to do what we did internally, which is ensure that everybody at your company has their own big lab account, whether it's a Claude account, whether it's a ChatGPT account, whatever that may be. Everybody should have their own. It shouldn't be shared across dozens of different one account across dozens of different team members, because in that situation, people are a lot less likely to put in personal information in there, to connect it to their email, and to actually get personal productivity gains that they would otherwise. So enable your team by giving them access, enable your team by showing them what's possible, lead by example, show how you as a leader have been able to automate parts of your workflow and what that actually has enabled you to do instead, as opposed to here's the time I saved, here's what I've been able to do thanks to this new technology. So I think flipping the flipping and enabling flipping the mindset and enabling your teams are how we're seeing PMs and frankly, their organization adopted more successfully.
And then I know we're coming to the last 10 minutes here. And I know we had some interesting ideas in our previous brainstorm that I want to bring up again. Are there any dangers you think of, or just concerns you guys have with the adoption of AI tools? And I know one we had before was guests leveraging AI tools to write complaints and things like that. So kind of curious, what risks or things do you think property managers should be aware of to be on the lookout now, thanks to kind of the proliferation of different AI products?
I think the cost aspect is really important. Our tools are included for free, but just OpenAI, they spent 3.7 billion subsidizing every single thing that people ask ChatGPT, and that was just in Q1, so over $1 billion a month. And there are some other success stories out there. For example, Amazon ran at a loss for 20 years before they turned a profit, and that's why they're usually cheaper than anyone else. However, they didn't spend 1 billion a month. And I don't think there's going to be any companies that will spend 1 billion a month for many, many years. And so far, there's not really any monetization model on AI. There's nobody has figured out how to charge the amount of money that it costs, because if you're asking it whether you should have coffee or tea and suddenly that question costs you $25, then you're just not going to use it at all. So that's something to be. I think it's a big risk for the entire world, actually, if we become too dependent on AI. I'm not saying we shouldn't use AI. I'm just saying that that is a real risk that especially technology companies that have laid off a lot of developers and due to efficiency gains in AI, they might have problems with that in the future if the cost go up and suddenly it turns out it might have been cheaper to have people.
Yeah, and I think like the other thing is like, of course, the barrier for building software has definitely gone down. And I think that one, and I'm not just saying this to like talk our own book because I think it's like really relevant. Like, it's the cost of creating software and serving markets has gone down a lot. The threshold for being able to build a new company has also gone down. I do think like customer referrals when you're like implementing a new product is like a bare minimum expectation because it's so net new. It's not like, these are all really fresh, and like hearing from other property managers is something we have as a policy that we'll always include, and try not to lead the witness too much, like try to give like very objective, folks. And if you have a great product, like people will be happy to cheer for you. And because the thing is like the risk is like plugging into a software. And to be honest, like I said, it's very competitive, but the distinction between like a couple people building out, unless you want to be like an early adopter, like diligencing the actual vendor a lot more. Because like when we started Marcus, there was like two or three of us on the marketplace for AI vendors, and you guys have probably like 50 plus now. Not to say those aren't all great businesses, but I know for a fact if you talk to our first 100 customers, like it was a very like partnership. Hey, this thing is like got a mind of its own. Like we messed up thousands of times. Thousands of messages before we could say it's really like sort of hallucination proof, and so we own that. So I just think like as you would any other partner, just do some due diligence, like ask them about their customers, like be realistic. Like for us, it's like you want to put your reputation on the line when you're bringing on a customer, not just get the sale and move on, because it's such a small industry. So I do think just be, and that comes with its great benefits, right? You have early stage startups that want to work with you and put a lot of effort in the way that a company that has like 200 plus employees that are already at scale in our industry can't, where every question is a support ticket. You can't get somebody on the line. So there are costs and benefits to those things. But in a world where it's all in this sort of AI brain, non-deterministic kind of like, LLM stuff, like I do think that's just like a one piece of advice that like I know when we were starting, we would just own that. Yes, this thing, I cannot guarantee this thing is going to mess up. And obviously, just by being around, over a few years, I think, and Simon, you're smiling, like Simon was one of our first early adopters, like, and he witnessed that firsthand. But I think building those partnerships early can, obviously, anyway, just really, really improve the business on both sides, both on the vendor and the PM.
And
And now, since we're coming to the last 5 minutes, I just kind of want to get from all three panelists, if we were to come back and do this in a year, kind of what do you think the biggest change or something that would feel very unusual that will be totally normal in a year from now as things are changing so rapidly? I don't know, Simon, do you want to start?
I think that I mean to some extent, and I think this cues a little bit what was mentioned here as well. Uh, One thing is we're going to have to consider our use of AI and our agents in a year, just as we consider our team members. And so in terms of risk, AI may remove friction, but it does not remove responsibility. Every automated action still has your name on it legally, reputationally, morally, right? You have to treat your agents, your guest communication agents, as you would members of your team. So the same way that you get like, E&O and professional insurance for your executives and your managers, so that if they make a stupid mistake, you can be protected. You should probably consider getting insurance for your agents. That sounds potentially outlandish, but I think that a year from now, we will all have not just cyber insurance, which many of you maybe already have, which is like, say your account gets hacked because you didn't set up 2FA and now you have guests suing you or owners suing you. That's one thing. But if a guest gets injured and an agent says, "Oh, we're really sorry, like we'd love to help," well, you've already admitted to fault potentially, and now you're in legal territory. So I think one definitely prediction that I have is that AI agents in general are going to be considered a lot more like teammates and have to be treated as such, both for their benefits as well as for the potential risks that they incur. And that's something you should be ready now before it potentially explodes.
Marcus, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I would say I think a big risk is also on the owner side of things. Uh, Things go wrong. This is real estate. It's very expensive, and there's a lot of things happening. A lot of guests come and go over the year, and yeah, you can get into some legal issues with owners who are too ex overexcited using AI as their lawyer that they wouldn't have just 2 years ago. So yeah, that's what I think the future is upon us. Hopefully, everyone will have their own AI lawyer, and then they can fight together and eventually figure out
AI
who's going to pay the
binding
bill.
arbitration is coming to us.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the one other point is just like the same baseline sort of guest communications at the OTA message level, text level is now getting much better at the voice level. So I think like this time next year, everyone's going to have like a first line of defense. The concept of a dial tree is so dated, nobody likes to hear it. It should be able to just semantically be like, hey, yeah, I'm an AI assistant. Like, what do you need? It's like I just need to get in, and when we see the phone numbers associated with that reservation, we can just quickly answer the question and take a lot of the load off that first line of defense over the phones for like unforced errors that people are stuck outside. And, we deal with that all the time, right? They just need the answer. And like sometimes they don't want to be patched to a human. I think that's going to become a lot more common because it's just an area that people like hate dealing with. And then to that joke, it's like, well, what if people don't want to talk to an AI? Well, soon it's just going to be their AI assistant calling your AI assistant asking, hey, my human can't get into the property. So it's just going to be a bunch of bots talking to each other anyway. But I do think that's going to be a lot more common, even if you're using like within Ring Central or any of these point solutions for calls. Like, I think that's going to be like, 2026. Like, why do we have like a press one for this, press two for this? I'd much rather talk to something more interactive than get out my phone and click the button. So I think that'll be a lot more common across the board.
So, well, as we're coming up to the hour, I just want to thank anyone have any last final thoughts before we wrap up today? I feel like we covered a ton of interesting topics, and I definitely have a lot of takeaways. Sweet. Sweet. Well, again, thank you everybody for attending. As I mentioned before, this will be published on the StayFi YouTube channel, and we will email this out to everyone who registered. So again, thank you so much. And thanks to our fantastic panelists. I'm really excited to see what all of you guys do over the course of the next year, because I feel like all of you are making huge impacts in the short-term rental space. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Arthur,
Thanks,
for
guys.
hosting.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank
Nice
you.
seeing you. Bye.